ASA is proud to welcome Dr. Heath Morrison, Superintendent, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, and ASA's 2012 National Superintendent of the Year for a conversation about college access and success.
Well, thank you, and it is a pleasure to be here.
As a school district leader, how are school leaders organizing districts to guide, manage, and support all students towards post-secondary success?
I think the school district has a huge obligation to make sure that we're not only graduating students, but getting them highly skilled, career and college ready. We're in a time right now where everything gets measured, everything's assessed, and so when you start to say, well, how do you define success in a large or small school district? And I happen to think that's one of the problems in public education. We haven't defined success, and so a lot of people out there right now are just talking about, well, we have to graduate more kids, and we do. But it's not just enough to graduate a child. That's half of the metric. And so having a young person walk across stage, getting that diploma is huge. But then to make sure that diploma means something, that it is a passport for a better tomorrow. And that better tomorrow is a highly skilled career or being able to get into college and be successful. We're sending too many kids to college that need remedial classes. And so having them be able to go ready to take credit-bearing courses, I think it's the most important thing that a public education system does.
ASA's research has shown that expectations, the degree to which all stakeholders expect all students to be college-bound, has a great impact on whether students succeed. Tell us about how expectations have played a role in the different districts that you've managed.
I've always believed as a teacher, or principal, area superintendent, our work is about attitude and expectations. It is how high do we set the expectations, and I believe a rising tide lifts all ships. And so we have to set high standards. We have to expect that we're going to get every student to walk across the stage, get a diploma. And I just remember a quick story was in Montgomery County, Maryland. We have a great business roundtable in Montgomery County. I mean, these are high-powered CEOs of very successful companies, and Montgomery County was right in the beginnings of the work around the 7 keys for college readiness, which is getting a lot of national attention, and rightfully so. And so a very prominent CEO pulled me aside and said, you know, Heath, I understand the messaging behind getting all kids ready for college, but let's be for real, not all kids are going to go to college, and so why can't you all just early on decide who's going and get them ready in one track, and then the kids who aren't, let's do something different for them, because that's what we do in the corporate world. We would differentiate, and we would plan intentionally about that future success. And so I needed a good answer for that, because that just so went against everything I believe about public education. And so we went down to a kindergarten classroom in the school that we were at for this meeting, and we watched this amazing teacher with about 20 very diverse group of kids in kindergarten, and they were all learning, and it was just great instruction, great learning. You just loved seeing this. And so we stayed in there for about 5 minutes, and then we stepped out, and I said, so what do you think? And the CEO looked at me and said, well, Heath, I was amazed. The teacher's fantastic, the kids are fantastic, but what's the point? You're not answering my question. I said, you know, the statistics say probably about 4 or 5 of those kids won't go on to college. I said, you go back in that classroom and you point out the 4 or 5 kids that we should right now in kindergarten say, we're not going to prepare you for college. And I said, we're getting really busy on that, but I can't do that, and maybe you can't. And he smiled and said, you know, that's a pretty good answer. And so to me, that's the point. We see young people, we have an obligation to give them a better future. And so every day, it's every child by name and face to graduation, and that's our obligation as public education leaders.
So part of this project has been about how school leaders are using post-secondary outcomes data, how their students have fared after high school, to impact curriculum and processes in the K-12 system. So tell us a little bit about your advice for school leaders to leverage that local data to increase college access and success.
You can get National Clearinghouse data now about the profiles of how kids left public education and did in 4 years or 6 years in terms of going on to college and university. So we have the data. It's what we do with the data that's always the most important. I think one of the things when people point a finger at public education and say you guys should do better, and I think one of the areas I've always felt strongly is that we've had a tendency to give kids who come to school with less at school. And when you think about the budgeting process, it's about who has access. And so who shows up at the town hall meetings, who shows up at the school board meeting the night that decisions are made. And unfortunately for our students impacted by poverty, mobility, English as second language, we put those meetings in places that aren't easy to get to. We don't make them known all the time. And so people who have access get to those meetings and they advocate for their schools and their children, rightfully so. But then those children who have families that don't have that type of access get the short end of the lollipop, if you will. And so what we have to do is to take these data, then to have the courage to say we're going to be about all kids. If we really are going to make a difference, if we're going to really stop talking about just narrowing gaps but close gaps, and really it gets back to attitude and expectations, then you have to budget based on your priorities. And if your priorities are to be about all kids, to truly have all students have that opportunity to walk across stage and get that passport for a better tomorrow, which is a diploma, then you have to budget accordingly, and that takes some courage. In Washoe County, Reno, Nevada, we have a program called Door to Door for Student Success, where in September we get every child that hasn't shown back up. We knock on doors, we bring our political leaders, our faith-based leaders, our civic leaders, and we get those students back into high school. We give them a personalized plan of progress so that the experience that they're going back into is different than the experience that they dropped out of. We open up 5 re-engagement centers spread throughout our community, places that you would expect to find kids who had vanished from school, so boys and girls clubs, homeless shelters, and we've gotten a lot of students back into public education that way as well. And then just then providing a network of support, helping them with credit attainment, helping them build their skills, really assessing where they are in terms of if we can not only graduate them but get them into college, what are the deficits. And so we've been giving our seniors this year the AccuPlacer, which is a college readiness assessment. And then while they're still in public education, trying to build those skills that we have not adequately provided for them.
One of the other facets our research has uncovered is the importance of signaling, the overt and covert signals that schools send to students, parents, teachers, and families about the importance of being college-bound and building a college-going culture. Talk a little bit about the signaling strategies that you've used in your work.
One of the things that we've tried to do is to be very courageous about having courageous conversations about race, because that's the thing that people don't want to put on the table, and it's absolutely necessary. If you as a school leader, if you as a superintendent are not being courageous about having those type of conversations, where you're asking questions such as, what is happening in my school district or my school around social justice? What are elements of institutional racism that we have to be aware of, or else we're going to not be serving kids well? How prevalent is white privilege in my school of diversity? If you're not asking those questions, and if there's not intentional framework to have those conversations and training to push true, robust cultural proficiency into the school, then you can do all the symbolic things with the t-shirts and the college days, but really you're not going to move the needle. If you walk by in a school that's extremely diverse and you see the students of the month and everybody's being honored and they don't match the diversity of the school, then that's a message that's just as powerful, in more cases more powerful, than the wearing of the t-shirts or the college day. So it has to be both. I think I'm big into the symbolism. I think it's important. But the true thing is getting back to attitude and expectations. Have I structured my classroom, my school district to be successful for all children? Until we have the courage to have those conversations, we're just really cutting around the edges.
You mentioned the pride that school district leaders have in seeing a first-generation student graduate from high school. We just finished graduation season. Talk a little bit about graduations and what that means to families and students.
Just the fact that that young person is first in their family to get a diploma from high school measurably increases the opportunity that that person's child is going to graduate from high school. And if they go on to college, then the chances are almost, it's a lock that their child's going to graduate from high school, but have a really good percentage of going on to get a college diploma. That's what's exciting, that's what's meaningful, that's where it just reinforces, because we can get into the numbers and the data, and I'm one of those people that's a self-professed data geek. I love utilizing data and using it to enhance performance and accountability and professional development. But at the end of the day, behind every data piece, there's a face. And if we don't recognize that, and every one of those faces has a story, we really miss the message about why what we're doing is so important and how we really are changing lives as we're creating better tomorrows, not only for these young people, but ultimately for our country.
Thank you, Dr. Morrison, for a great conversation about college access and success. AASA is proud to have you as our 2012 National Superintendent of the Year. It was great. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and it is a pleasure to be here and to support AASA's important work and research in this field, and just to be a part of that national dialogue is incredibly meaningful and very appreciated.